Biliyor musun? Erken rezervasyon başladı. Yazın en renkli fırsatları cyprusparadise.com'da. %40, %50 hatta %60'a varan kaçırılmaz indirimler. Erken rezervasyon yap, uçak bileti fiyatına paket tatili al. Uygun fiyata Kıbrıs tatilinin adresi cyprusparadise.com. Zaman akıp gitmeden acele edin. Bir bakmışsınız yaz gelmiş. Cyprus Paradise. Tatiliniz bizimle güvende.
Kalitenin, güvenin, hızlı teslimatın adresi Ancon Furniture. Ancon Furniture ailesi olarak yeni ürünler ile hizmete devam etmekteyiz. Yeni model koltuk takımlarımız, yatak mekanizmaları bir dokunuş ile açılıp bir dokunuş ile kapanabilmektedir. Bir dokunuş ile açtığımız yatak mekanizmasının yatak çarşafı kullanıma hazır, serili olarak içinden çıkmaktadır. Yıl sonuna kadar herhangi bir koltuk takımı alan her müşterimize akıllı sehpa hediyemizdir. En iyi ürün, en iyi fiyat. Sadece Ancon Furniture'da. Bize uğramadan karar vermeyin. En iyisini biz yapana kadar daha iyisi yok.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Eurogenç TV's program. It's a special program on Cyprus. When the simmering Cyprus problem came to boil, I was only 6 years old. 62 years on, and we are still talking about the Cyprus issue. But who is actually talking about this issue? It's, I think, people my age and mainly men who are talking about this. Tonight, what we are going to do is to give young people a chance to express their views, their aspirations, how they see the future about Cyprus. So, welcome again. Let's introduce the young people who are my esteemed guests tonight. Hello everyone. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the program. Are you okay?
Yes.
Good. Now, what I'd like you to do is, for up to 3 minutes, what I'd like you to do is to tell me what you consider the Cyprus issues are, and why the Cyprus issue is important to you personally. So, Sheniz, can we start with you?
Yeah. Hi. So, for me, ever since I was little, my father spoke to me about the Cyprus problem. Before I'd ever been there, I knew I was from a divided island, and that peace was really important and something that he was going to spend his entire life fighting for. It was his dream to see Cyprus reunited, and he passed that dream on to me, and it breaks my heart that he passed away. before he could see it come to pass. But so that's why it's so important to me. I go there regularly. I have a lot of family and friends there. Like, I really talk to the people there. I think sometimes people in the UK say, oh, peace will never work, they don't want it over there. Some of the people have never been to the island since 74. When they go, they stay in hotels and they don't mix with the locals, and they don't talk about what the people in the country really want and how their lives have been impacted by this division and by this isolation. I was reading something the other day about how arbitrary borders are. If you think about, it's like a human construct to divide and to rule. And thinking about it is like, you know, people on either side are so similar, their cultures, the way they raise their children, their cuisine. And I was talking about it with a colleague at work who grew up on the border of Zimbabwe and Mozambique, and he used to jump across either side and say, I'm in Zimbabwe, I'm in Mozambique. And you know, it's so silly. And he's told me this quote, and it really hit home about Cyprus, and I'll read it to you because it sums it up perfectly to me. Is, borders are scratched across the hearts of men by strangers with a calm judicial pen, and when the borders bleed, we watch with dread the lines of ink across the map turn red. And it sums it perfectly to me. Like, it's such a tiny, beautiful, amazing place, and to have this border breaking it up, it makes no sense to me. I can't. It's heartbreaking, it's frustrating, it's futile. And there we go. Okay. That's me.
Yeah. That's your 3 minutes. Thanks, Sheniz. Thanks very much. Florenza, what does the Cyprus issue mean to you, and why is it important for you?
Well, it's very similarly, I think in all Cypriot households, we sort of grow up and this is the only sort of political discussion that happens within the home, or the most prevalent. So I was born in London and I moved to Cyprus when I was 11, and I completed my education there until I returned to London to study history and politics, and now on to anthropology. And all of my research has always been about Cypriot people. I think when you're a Cypriot, that's what you care about most, in being an advocate, in taking part in some way, in the capacity that you have. But the problem is that the Cyprus issue is the defining issue of our community, one which has left us, especially our generation, lethargic. Like, my dad was in the conflict, you know, my mum, you know, left, well, she wasn't born yet, but you know, there was people that we knew that have experienced that, we've had loss, and I think this anecdote sort of informs my early education on the Cyprus issue. But then as we progress throughout to remove ourselves from the community, and then we see that this issue is beyond us, and it's actually about power, and it's about the guarantor powers, and it's about the oil, and it's about Orientalism and nationalism and fascism, and that these divides that have marked our identity are in fact a game for international powers, and our utopian dreams of this island paradise, one which I am so privileged to have grown up in, is tarnished by this military presence, the Turkish military presence, tarnished by the fact that, as you introduced the show, this conversation is dominated almost entirely about men, almost always by men. And then, you know, my dissertation was on the gendered effects of nationalism from the in the Turkish Cypriot community, and how so many voices are silenced. But then on top of that, all of the human rights violations that happen because of us being a de facto state, because of our lack of recognition. I think I strive for peace and unity, because not just for us as privileged, educated, you know, young Cypriots, but also for the people who happen upon the island and happen to come in between. And that, I think, yeah. So the Cyprus issue marks my past, my present, and my future. And I think it's very similar for most.
Yes, we can sense the passion in your voice when you are talking about Cyprus. It's so apparent how passionate you are about Cyprus. Thanks, Florenza. And Emin, can I ask you to do the same?
Yeah, I think my story is a bit similar too, because I grew up since the beginning of my life. I remember my grandfather talking about the Cyprus issue because he was a mujahid himself. He fought in the war. And I remember lots of stories just growing up. And the first thing that came to my mind was that in high school, or even primary school, I remember watching my friends playing football, and they were complaining that they cannot be football players in the future if they stay in Cyprus. And it kind of created the basis of the problem in my head. Why? Because everybody in Cyprus basically still considers us as having a government, legitimate government. But then why is this embargoes? Then when I started reading, I got deeper into the Cyprus issue when I encountered with a lot of embargoes, sports, trade, and other social embargoes as well, because you cannot be represented as a community. When you say that you're from the Turkish Cypriot community, you don't have the legal tool to back it up. You can only say that you're coming from a territory that is considered as either illegally occupied or unrecognized state, or a state that freed itself. It differs. And I still remember, and I still encounter the same aspects of life that, for example, let's say politicians keep talking about when there is a failure of a public policy, they always come up with the same excuse, saying that, yeah, we are not recognized, so we can't move on. So it's a pattern and a cycle that goes on that never lets you forget it. And I also think that it's, as a Turkish Cypriot, as a Cypriot, first of all, it's kind of a lesson or a homework for everyone to be part of this issue and try to solve it rather than being the problem.
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
the issue for me.
Thanks very much, Emin. Ruya, all the way from Cyprus. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Ertanc. Thanks for this opportunity. Just as my friends have actually excellently summarized, I agree with their views that they've just previously stated. I think there are many ways to approach this whole Cyprus issue. And, looking at it from an international point of view, you can just treat it like an issue that has been dusting off in some history books and that has been left unresolved, comes up in the news every 4 or 5 years or so if it attracts the attention of big states and big actors, as we kind of know. And from an elite perspective, I guess, which I mean, the decision makers, it's a topic that they can play around with, but not have that much space to play around with for 20, 30 years of negotiations now. It's been the same kind of concept going on and on. But it's something that the elites, I believe, very regularly take advantage of to kind of put on their own agendas too, and to promise a future around this whole issue. But for regular people like us, especially people from the Turkish Cypriot community living on the island, it's an issue that affects your everyday life, socially, politically, economically. You are obliged to kind of live with this whole restricted reality of what your opportunities are, what your dreams can be, how far you can go with them, what kind of relations you're supposed to have with members from other communities, what kind of history, what kind of an idea you should have about the history that you haven't even lived, for instance, for people from my generation especially. So it's an issue which can be approached in so many different ways, but it is definitely a crucial one that affects almost every single second of our lives, how we plan our days, how we plan our relations, how we plan our future. So I guess that would be my way of putting it.
Thanks very much, Ruya. I've done it again. I forgot to ask you to introduce yourself. And what do you do at the moment? Can we go around very quickly? Sheniz, what do you do at the moment?
I currently work as a communications officer. I've written and edited newspapers, viral news websites, and I used to write for Tottenham Post as well.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes, communication is very, very important, isn't it? In the subject we are talking about. And Florenza, what are you doing at the moment?
I have a background in history and politics. That was my undergrad, and I'm currently studying visual anthropology.
Wow, visual anthropology.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And my final film will be on Cyprus. COVID permitting, I'll be able to go back, but if not, it'll be here.
Fantastic. Yeah, Emin, what are you doing at the moment?
I'm a last year law student in Queen Mary University of London. So I'm living in London.
Okay.
It's my last year. I'm planning to do a master's next year.
What area of law are you involved in, Emin?
Right now, predominantly company law, but I have other more social subjects that is attached to it as well, together with it, which is feminist legal theory, and which expands further.
Feminist theory, did you say?
It's the other aspect of one of the modules that I'm taking. It's next year. It's going to be the other half of it.
Right. Excellent. Thanks very much. And Ruya?
Right. I've recently graduated from my master's in peace and conflict studies. And prior to that, I had my bachelor's degree on politics and international relations. I completed most of my studies in the UK, my bachelor's in the University of Kent, and then my master's in University of Manchester. But I also had an exchange year in the United States for some adventure, I'd say. Yeah. So I'm currently in Cyprus, in Famagusta, with my family.
Yeah, great. Many thanks indeed. I mean, all four of you are doing or have done things which are really relevant for the Cyprus issue. And someone wrote this in Facebook. A comment I came across only this morning. He says this: these young people, talking about you, should learn about the past before they can talk about the future. That got me a bit annoyed, quite annoyed, in fact. And there is this kind of really patronizing attitude from older people. So if you haven't lived through the conflict of Cyprus, you don't know anything. Whereas, as we said earlier, people who have been talking about this issue are older people and mostly men. What do you say to this kind of comments? Anyone? Any one of you? Go on.
I lived this every day when I was, maybe not every day, but it was an experience I had often when I used to go to political events or, the meetings, and a lot of, my dad's friends would be fine because they knew the story, but you would usually, people from the other side, people from different kind of political perspective to me would talk down because you're a female, for one, because you're young, because you haven't lived there, because you haven't, I don't know, you don't qualify in their eyes to hold an opinion. And I even had it not a few days ago on a social media post. I said something about what the other side are thinking, and someone kind of actually'd me and mansplained the problem a bit, and I resisted biting. I didn't want to, because he was of the same opinion as I was. I just thought, I'm leaving it. But it's a common problem that I think we all have. I think all sections of society have to learn to listen to each other a little bit more and adapt their communication methods to understand each other's problems, to kind of help find a solution.
Yes. And also, when people are talking about the past, whose past? What do they mean, the past? Florenza, what do you think about this kind of comments?
I mean, I think for me, it's something that I've obviously experienced as well. And being here since I was about 18, but even before then, I was very politically engaged and very vocal about my perspectives. I know that I will be undermined, and I know that my point of view won't be considered, but I also know that I have spent my entire life reading, writing, engaging with the subjects that I talk about. So as much as I may not be an expert in my own mind, like I was very hesitant, as you know, Ertanc Hidayettin, to like come onto the program today, as I know that I haven't even, not to say thought about the Cyprus problem, but the pandemic has meant that my response to this issue is going to be personal. But at the same time, I have as much expertise as the next person, and I'm very willing to listen to every person that speaks on it. I just want peace, and I just want to be able to travel home, and I would like to be able to know that there is a future for me in Cyprus, a future that people are building in this moment, and that has nothing to do with my gender or my age. And if people choose to dismiss that, then I mean, like it's a very problematic view, but the older generation will die out, and the younger generation is a lot more understanding, and we will unlearn these sort of gendered, very violent things.
You've got a vested interest. You've got a vested interest a lot more than we do as the older generation. So you've got a right to speak more than anyone else as young people. Emin, can I ask you the same question? How do you answer comments like that? And have you come across with those comments yourself?
Yes, when multiple times, yes, I did. But generally, for example, the example that you have given, I think the place that we should put emphasis on is the underlying meaning, because that the comment they made is very one-sided and is politicized as well. Because what they mean is that know the past and use the past as a tool to guide your future, not in a good sense of learning, absorbing it, and then just thinking about it and using it, but rather it's preferred that like just know about it and just act upon it, which is exactly the problem that has been going on for decades.
Yes. I'm going to ask you about this sort of film later on, but let's put that to one side at the moment. What do you say, Ruya, to those kind of comments?
Right. We hear these comments a lot, and I don't know. Sometimes I think the way that the comment is made is what sounds offensive more than what is meant by it. Yes, the past and the history has importance, and I don't think that anyone denies that, even in our generations. But just as Emin has also stated, actually, it's what we make out of it. And usually with comments like this, my reply is that, okay, what do we get out of this then? What if you've lived through the war, if you lived through such a traumatic period of life, is this what you would want for future generations? Most likely the answer is no. So that is what we should be working on. And that is why we're trying to talk more about this issue. Yes, we do need the insight of the past, obviously, but it's the idea of what kind of a future that you want to build. And we want, as the younger generations now, we want to kind of scrape ourselves out of this whole hopelessness of not knowing whether we're going to have the opportunities. We want to be able to live in a, cherishing and kind of like blossoming society. And that's why we're focusing more on what outcome we can have as a peaceful outcome that would work for all communities of this island, and not the traumatic past experiences that will keep us stuck, that will keep our hearts filled with hatred. That would do no good to anyone anyway. So it's about being more productive and taking what is needed from the past to not repeat the same mistakes, but in a constructive way, not a destructive way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. Why do you think no solution has been found to the problems of Cyprus? No political solutions have been found. Why is this, do you think? Shall we start with you again, Sheniz?
Yeah. So I think there's so many reasons. I mean, it's really complicated. There was a lot of outside influence. I think we all, it's not a hidden conspiracy anymore that there was external influence from America, from Russia, from Britain in the divide. I think everyone's accepted that there was a lot of external interference. Greece, Turkey, everyone had a hand in it. I think I don't know. I think there's an old the saying, isn't it? In Cyprus, when people take long, you say they're solving the Cyprus problem. It's there for a reason, because it's difficult. And I think the fact that there was such so many people immigrated, and there's people all over the world kind of campaigning for peace in Cyprus, but without actually connecting up with people there. I think that there is a lot of hate on both sides, a lot of hate that's passed down, and sometimes those who hate shout the loudest. I think sometimes the pacifists and the pro-peace people need to, we campaign here, and my father and his friends, there's so many people have fought so hard, but I think we need to galvanize the people in the middle ground, the moderates, the people who may not, who think politics is boring or don't understand that politics is life, and get them to people say, oh, we can't live in peace with the Greeks, but some of them here have Greek friends, and they go to like the Greek shops, and they know they use Greek words when they speak to their Greek neighbors, and it's that kind of irony that we need to address and look at. And I think that's part of the issue is that it is super complicated. It's getting people to let go of the past in ways, and people are very keen to hold on to that.
Yeah. Okay. And Florenza?
I feel like, to say I know why there is no why there has not yet been a solution for the Cyprus problem, would be a bit naive on my part, but I think it's mainly to do with the guarantor powers. It's in Turkey's best interest, it's in Greece's best interest, it's in the United Kingdom's best interest. It always has been. And now, with the discovery of oil, with the military bases, they've always been there. It's seen as the warship of the Mediterranean, this island historically, from the Lusinians, the Venetians. My name is Florenza for this reason. All of these, we have the people, Lino Bambaki, we have different communities, we have all of these terms that even visibly within our community show why there is such a difficulty for the Cyprus problem. But it's hard to sort of homogenize an opinion. It's hard for people in the diaspora who only heard the horror stories and the trauma of war that was mentioned earlier in this program. They only heard that, and only having that viewpoint means that your children and your grandchildren, so people in our generation now, have that hate that Sheniz mentioned in their hearts because of that propaganda and because of that false history, that false narrative that is put forward. And I know so many amazing, I spent most of my life looking for prominent Turkish Cypriots, but then I realized how that was a flawed thing to look for, and that what I should look for is a way to contribute to peace on my homeland. And I know that no matter what, the solution will come because there is a desire for it. And I think it's the similar way for standing in solidarity with other, communities across the world, and making sure that we are actually engaged internationally instead of focusing inward. What other solutions can we see across the world that have worked for, communities that have multiple different ethnic minorities within them? Even when you look at the Turkish Cypriot community, we're not a homogenous community. We've discussed this before, Ertanc, but we aren't this one big thing. We are full of these rhizomatic sort of relational identities, and there's those who are very religious, and those who are not, and those who are spiritual, and those who eat this and practice this and wear that and listen to this. And so the solution will come once we recognize that it's not about sameness with Greek-speaking Cypriots or difference. It's about that relationality and about choosing peace, choosing agency. So I can't say exactly why it hasn't happened yet, but I think it is that old mindset which is very militaristic. And I think now that there is a lot more, you know, discussion about other avenues for peace, then we will get there. I do believe it. I want to believe it.
Yes, I mean, we talk about solution and peace, and I think those two are completely different. Solution, a political solution can be found, but peace is a lot more difficult to establish, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned some of the ways that it can be done, Florenza. Can I ask you, Emin, in terms of how peace and the solution can be established, what are the most important factors in this? Taking the solution and the peace separately, perhaps, for this, for your answer.
Well, thank you, first of all. And secondly, there are multiple factors that affect both of them, both the idea of solution and the idea of peace at the same time. But as you said, they are not always coexistent. So sometimes solution doesn't necessarily bring peace. Pointed out that fully affects the solution. Firstly, as Florenza mentioned, the big powers that surround us have enormous influence over the situation. For example, it not even just not even the influence of these decision makers, even the public opinion that is extracted from Turkey and has been implemented in the Turkish Cypriot community changed a lot of public opinion. So I call these non-Cypriot factors because it's not about the Greek Cypriots or Turkish Cypriots, it's about the big powers. And these new communication that's happening this month, for example, EU is becoming the part of the negotiations, and Turkey is part of the negotiations as well. So it kind of gives the idea that Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots are being squeezed down, and EU is campaigning in favor of Greek Cypriots, and Turkey is campaigning in favor of Turkish Cypriots, which shows that we have been and we are losing our capacity to advocate for our rights. I think that I've just explained the process of which forms one big factor, and mutual trust that everything is going on and there are not many meetings. For example, I'm 21, and I've had 1 or 2, maximum 3 Greek Cypriot friends ever, and I've tried my best to find it, and I found them in London while studying in London.
Yeah.
And there is literally zero to just a bit contact between the youngsters. And yes, there are NGOs like Unite Cyprus now that allow people to meet up, but 10, 15, 20 youngsters getting together is not going to have any much influence. It must be governmental, and it must be more upper level.
Yeah.
For solution and peace at the same time. I think that the communication factor will create the basis for both of them, both coexistence of solution and peace.
And peace. Yeah, I mean, Ruya, I know that you've got some activities in Cyprus in terms of towards peace. You've got a few initiatives you are involved in. Can you talk to us about those? What are those initiatives?
Yes, of course. Well, one of the initiatives that I'm actively involved in right now is Unite Cyprus Now, which has been active since I think mostly during the Kran Montana period. They've done important work in terms of the involvement of civil society. And it was just a movement that started, I think prior to that though, before Kran Montana period, 2015 could be the year, if I'm not wrong. Apologies to my fellow colleagues. But one of the really crucial platforms is that I have recently become more active in. But the most recent one that I'm involved in is a youth initiative, actually, Ertanc Hidayettin. It's a communal youth initiative called Hade. And as you can tell by the name,
very Cypriot word, Hade.
Yes, it calls for action immediately, and we have 4 points in our mission statement. So one of them being the immediate reopenings of the checkpoints, of course, under the COVID-19 precautions. The other one being the negotiations continuing under the respective UN Security Council resolutions, Guterres framework. The other, can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
We can. Internet keeps going on and off.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
I know.
sorry.
But you are
let me know.
You are fine. That's fine. Go on.
Okay, great. The other one is about the cooperation in terms of health between the two sides, immediate call for cooperation. And last but not least is the call for transparency of the negotiation process and the involvement of civil society, which I believe is a very, very significant point to raise. As Emin and Florenza, the problem of the longevity of this whole Cyprus issue and the negotiations and not being able to come to a solution is because I always state this in terms of planets and stars coming along and aligning. Like it's a once in a lifetime chance that you need to have the civil society being active. You need to have the leaders having a more positive approach towards the solution. You need to have the international actors having interest towards solving the issue. So it's a lot of factors that affect it. But when even one of them is missing, that's what's halting the whole process. And that's what's making the stagnation continue. So I believe that especially in terms of this particular problem, the Cyprus problem, it's an old issue. And just as you stated, Ertanc, it's generally, typically white, older men who are representing a much heterogeneous population than they're portraying. And it's just their chances of getting along that we're longing to seek, and then if they get along, which happened during the 2004 period when the other actors were okay with it, and then the leaders were okay with it, but then the problem was the civil society wasn't. I mean, specifically on the Greek Cypriot side for this matter, but then there's an issue of all of these actors being on the same page, and that needs to be completed. That needs to be the goal, to kind of, how can I say, show everyone why this solution is necessary, why the status quo cannot continue anymore. Why is it important for civil society? Why is it important for leaders? And why is it important for international actors? If we do a good job with the initiatives like Hade and United Cyprus Now, and Barış Yürüyüşü is also one of the initiatives that I was previously involved in, which we had a demonstration, a peace march. And the goal behind that was to tell this exact idea of why we want peace on this island, because that's the only future we get. And I guess that's the way that we could go with it.
You are doing more than your fair share of trying to achieve peace, Ruya. You are doing a hell of a lot. So I think it's young people's initiatives like the ones you mentioned, that gives some hope for the future for Cyprus. I mean, do you all feel helpless that despite all these efforts, young people's voices are not really heard and ignored, basically? I mean, we are on the eve of yet another talks in Cyprus, and we've gone through many talks in the past. Hopes rise and then falls after the talks. Do you have much hope as to something will happen as a result of the forthcoming informal talks? They are informal, but it's still quite important. What is your assessment of what's going to happen? Are you hopeful that something is going to happen? Because there are also some shift of opinions on the part of the Turkish Cypriot side and Turkey's side. Now they are talking about a two-state solution and also partition. Some people are openly talking about a partition of Cyprus to annexation rather than partition, annexation of Cyprus, North Cyprus to Turkey. So what do you think about these forthcoming talks? Are you hopeful? What do you think will happen as a result of these talks? We start with Florenza this time.
I can't say that I'm hopeful as much as I may be a little bit of a utopian, and I think there always lies a bit of a fear. There is a fear of the annexation, of more of a military presence, especially on Turkey's part. I think that's something that we kind of have to live with when you're in Cyprus. And I obviously have not lived there full time since I was in school, so it has been a few years now. But I think I consulted quite a few people before I came today because of my lack of expertise, I would say, and there is a sense of nihilism, there is an apprehension, and people aren't looking onto this positively. And I think Emin and Ruya touched on this earlier, but like there is a problem with the fact that people in Cyprus, there is a changing tide of opinion, and we can all see that, and we can see that changing tide become slightly more right-wing because of other, factors, and that's a quite terrifying prospect, and it's a terrifying thing to witness when you are here on the sidelines, not knowing what to do and how to contribute in that way. So I can't say I'm positive, but I am positive that something will happen.
If not now, in the near future, do you think? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Florenza. Sheniz, what do you think will happen as a result of these talks? 4+1 talks, they call them.
Is that what they're calling them? Honestly,
or is it 5+1? Yeah, go on.
I'm not particularly hopeful at all for these talks. I'll follow them. I'd love to be pleasantly surprised. The people touting the two-state solution, I think they're trumpeting a fairy tale vision. I don't think they kind of understand what they're promoting. I don't think it can exist. It is basically going to be an extension of the status quo. It's not going to be anything. They won't. I don't know what what they think it's going to be that is any different to what is happening there now, and no one is happy with how it is now. I don't want to be an extension of Turkey. I'm not from Turkey. I have no problem with Turkish people as such, but the idea of the Turkish government having an even stronger control over the north of the island terrifies me. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, they pulled out of the Istanbul Convention for women's rights. That is mortifying. Some of the laws that have been coming out of the country, there was the marry your rapist law that they were talking about a few years ago. I don't know if it got passed or not, but it's scary. It's terrifying. And, I don't feel that Turkish Cypriots want that. They want the isolation to end. Of course they do, but they don't want that oppression. They don't want that kind of law brought into their country. But I mean, that's how I see.
Okay, thanks, Sheniz. Ertan is waiting to be connected. Ertan is the actual host for this program. I am filling in for him. So he finished his work earlier, so he can join us now. So Gülay, can you connect Ertan? And in the meantime, there are, again, I've been neglecting reading these messages. There are quite a lot of messages. Abi Hussein is saying, dream we all dream about. I don't know exactly what this relates to. Hatice Teralı İncirli, Florenza is saying, iyi yayınlar, anlamasam da izliyorum. Selamlar, sevgiler. Saygılar, sevgiler size Hatice Hanım. Sultan Mehmet Özkurtlar, iyi yayınlar. Florenza diyor. Abi is saying, we are Turkish speaking Cypriots. We are Europeans. Our place is in Europe. Our homeland is our motherland. Okay. Abi Hussein again. Abi is quite busy tonight. Yeah, I read that before. Okay. Serpil is saying, no, they are watching. Okay, Serpil is saying, Serpil Güldavulcular, if the older generations lived through the war, we as the younger generation have lived through the backlash of the effects of the war as Turkish Cypriots living in London. We constantly are, impacted by this. We constantly are impacted by this. As academics, as Florenza has rightly mentioned, we are passionate about research topics to do with Turkish Cypriots and our identities as in London. The fact that the Cyprus problem has not been resolved impacts these research topics we research. Okay. Photo Kuzupis is saying a dedication to all Cypriots and to all participants to the conference 5+1 at the end of the month. Photos is reminding us that this is a 5+1. Turkish Cypriots, Greek Cypriots, the British, Turkey, Greece, plus the European Union. Yeah. Hatice Hanım diyor, konuşulanları işitemem ama sizin gibi gençleri dinlemek gurur verici. Kıbrıs'ın aydınlık yüzleri, bravo diyor sevgili Hatice Hocanım. Evet, I agree with you, Sheniz diyor Sonia Oliver. Okay, there are some more, but perhaps I can read them a bit later. Yeah, Emin, can you talk about your hopes and aspirations as a result of these talks? What do you think will happen?
To be honest, I'm fairly pessimistic about the next conference, because I believe that if Turkish Cypriot side, as we go with the agenda of two-state solution, which is, I believe, is a complete fiction, if that happens, we won't be getting any good consequences. There are going to be results of the convention or gathering. There are going to be results, but I don't see those results as possibly positive, because I cannot see any country in the UN Security Council who would be saying yes to this, to a two-state solution, or any country in the world who will agree to take a European Union and all the other big powers in front of them and recognize TRNC. So with the two-state solution agenda, I don't see, in terms of international law, that the things that according to the things that I've read, and in practice, and both in practice and theory, the two-state solution, I don't see it as something that can be accepted by that will be accepted by the European Union or any other major power. I mean, even Russia,
Okay.
which is the main adversary of the Western countries, it has developed its Orthodox Christian ties with Greece and South Cyprus or Republic of Cyprus in the term. So two-state solution, it can be considered as one big loss again for the pattern that we're going.
Okay. Hi, Ertan. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having
you've
me.
been hearing, I think in the background, you've been listening to the program, and you heard the you heard that people here present have been expressing a lot of pessimism about the forthcoming talks. They don't think anything will be achieved, but at the same time, people think that the two sides, there should be these two sides should come together, especially as young people, for the future. And we talked about the fact that the solution and peace are two different things. So what is your take on this forthcoming conference, and what would you like to see as a result of this conference?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. As you know, I've been the host of this show for the past two episodes, let's say. Today, I'm just here representing myself. So anything I say, it's my own opinion. It doesn't represent Eurogench or any other group that I'm a part of. For the upcoming talks, I mean, if it goes ahead as the Turkish Cypriot government is saying it's going to go ahead, where they're going to put forward a plan for a two-state solution, then I don't really see it going anywhere, because quite frankly, the Greek Cypriot side, they're not ready to accept a two-state solution, the same way that they're not ready to accept reunification, regardless of what civil society thinks on either side. The status quo, the powers that be, whether they be in Cyprus or outside of Cyprus, they're not ready to have any kind of solution to the Cyprus problem, whether that be a two-state solution or reunification. I think the current powers in the world are very happy to leave Turkish Cypriots in what is essentially an open-air prison, a very beautiful one, I might add. I'm not going to complain about that. Cyprus is a very beautiful island aesthetically, but as the young people here have expressed, there isn't a lot of opportunity for Turkish Cypriots, you know, to compete in the international arena in any field of business or trade or politics or anything like that. And I think that is actually what the global status quo, let's say, has aimed for us as a Turkish Cypriot community. That is their agenda. They do not want to see a young generation of Turkish Cypriots educated with skills and knowledge and connections, growing up to actually establish their footprint on this planet. So unfortunately, we are the sacrificial lambs of that status quo. And before I continue, actually, I just want to say that I've been observing the show from backstage, and in fact, I was kind of semi-involved in the preparations for this show as well. I was trying to find guests for this show. And I literally went through my entire WhatsApp contacts, my Facebook contacts, my Twitter contacts. I mean, I consider myself quite a well, you know, I have a lot of connections within the Turkish Cypriot community. And I suddenly realized, after going through all of my contacts, it was so difficult to find even 5 young Turkish Cypriots, particularly those born in Britain, who have, first of all, an opinion on the Cyprus problem, whether that be left-wing or right-wing, makes no difference, and who have enough knowledge and confidence to back up their opinion. And I find that quite worrying, actually, because we are, as was mentioned earlier in the show, we are the future of the Turkish Cypriots here. And if we can't bring together at least, you know, 10, 15 young Turkish Cypriots to talk about this, how are we going to represent our arguments in the future? How are we going to establish our presence in the future? And is quite worrying, not just for the Cyprus problem for us, but for us as a community as well.
I think there are many, many young people living in this country, in England, who are quite able and capable of expressing their views on the Cyprus issue. It's just that the Cyprus issue, even in Cyprus, if you ask people where does the Cyprus problem come in terms of priority, it comes quite low down. Because not just because of COVID, because before COVID, people's hopes have been dashed so many times that they no longer consider Cyprus issue as the main issue. They are more interested in economic issues. They are a lot more interested in employment, unemployment issues, social issues, than the Cyprus issue, I'm afraid. And if people in Cyprus, if for them the Cyprus issue is quite low down in the priority list, you can imagine people living in this country, in England, it's even further down in the priority list for young people in this country, because there are so many pressures, so many issues for young people to deal with in this country, that they don't really have the inclination to get involved in the Cyprus issue. I mean, let me put this to the other people. What do you think of what Ertan and I have just said? How far down the priority list is Cyprus issue for young people in this country and Cyprus? I mean, you live in Cyprus, Ruya. How far is it in the priority list? Is it the most important issue for young people in Cyprus?
In Cyprus, well, I think you raise an important factor, Ertanc Hidayettin, which is the economic factor. And obviously, when people's lives are affected in an economic way, and when it affects them negatively, drastically, especially these last few years, has, I think, shown that the status quo can't go on due to these kind of effects as well. But people have a hard time relating this issue to the Cyprus issue. We don't get to realize that usually all of these little factors that affect our everyday lives is due to the status quo, due to the embargoes that we're experiencing, due to, I'm really saddened when I state this, but due to being too okay with it too, that I think we've come to really like the situation of not doing anything and expecting a savior to do everything for us, whether it to be an international actor or a leader or someone else. And I think the way that we're coping with it is so ignorant now that it is high on our priority list, but we don't get to realize in which ways our own problems are relating to this whole bigger picture of the Cyprus issue. So I guess that's what I can say. But the youth in Cyprus, I'd say, is pretty much active, especially these last few years with the negotiations having a different kind of direction now, and the internal affairs kind of drastically changing. I at least from what I observed, I see the youth being more and more active. The COVID in some way has also affected that. People are taking part in online seminars and online broadcasts such as these much more often now to express their views and to actually think about these, to kind of have their own think tanks in a way in different organizations. So in that sense, I'd say people are making it a bigger of a priority now in Cyprus.
Okay. I mean, Sheniz, you live in this country, and in your opinion, in terms of the Turkish Cypriot community in England, how far is it? I mean, how important the Cyprus issue for Turkish Cypriots living in this country and perhaps living in the diaspora?
I think it really, really varies. It depends on, you know, what's been passed down from their family. You know, you can either have people like me who have been brought up with it as a, you know, it's as important to me as what goes on in English politics, you know. And then there's other people who, in some ways, they're kind of, they are a picture of the vision that we want to embody there. I've got friends, and my cousin, you know, their best friends are Greek Cypriot, their boyfriends, their girlfriends are Greek Cypriot. They show you in reality, in the way that they live their life, that peace can work. And we, you know, this whole paradoxical, we moved to London along green lanes all next to each other, side by side. But these people are apolitical and they're not engaged. And I think we as the political ones needs to do more to engage them. And one of my things, and I don't know who's the person to do it, and I sometimes think about starting a blog again. And, you know, I think we need to utilize our amazing sense of humor and create some funny. Cypriots have the best sense of humor in the world. There is no one funnier than us. I think we're amazingly witty people, and I think we need to utilize that and create some viral content and use social media to reach the kind of people that previously would say, oh, politics is old men in a meeting room. That has to, that image has to end, and we need to move forward, and we need to get more people involved, and these are the ways we need to do it. And I don't know, that's what I think. If anything is going to change, it will be because we change the whole format in which we approach this problem.
Yeah, I think Florenza, I think it was, who mentioned the experiences of other countries. You mentioned, was it Zimbabwe, Florenza? Sorry. Anyway, do you think, when talking about peace, bringing peace rather than solution might come, but to establish peace is a lot more difficult. It takes a lot more longer. So in South Africa, as you know, they established these truth and reconciliation committees. What do you think about that being applied to Cyprus? Would it be, I don't know, how do you think it will work in Cyprus, this type of initiatives? Emin, do you have a view on this? This kind of truth and reconciliation committees they established in South Africa?
I don't have deep knowledge about the truth and reconciliation committees in South Africa, but I have heard about it, and I've searched about it a bit, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But it's kind of the same efforts that's going all around the world to bring people back to the idea of remembering that we are all human beings. I think it's vital for communities to get together and to remember the fact that whatever happened was something common. But as whatever we talk here, whatever kind of politics or economic measures we talk here, it must be ratified and approved by the two sides. So everything comes in a blockade, a dam that needs to be opened. I think that might be, me saying this can be understood as a shortcut answer, but that's the only thing that worries me, because I believe that because of having Greek Cypriot friends as well, I believe that we can coexist and live together. But that's politics are separate things as well. So, I mean, still, it's a long overdue topic, but I believe that it can work. It can be applied in Cyprus.
Okay. What do you think, Ertan, about this idea of, is Cyprus ready for this type of initiatives?
I think there are a lot more things that they need to achieve before they start moving towards that step. I know that they have established certain bodies between, you know, the two sides with the help of international actors like the UN, you know, to help find the bodies of missing people and identify them and things like that, which is, you know, regardless of what your political opinion is on the matter, it's always a positive step. You know, there are certain things that should be left out of politics. And surprisingly, one area where both sides are doing quite well in their cooperation efforts is the kind of religious side of things. You know, we have the Turkish Cypriot representative of the Muftuate in the South Cyprus, Imam Shakir Alemdar. And, you know, he's been cooperating with the leaders of the Orthodox Church, the Armenian Latin Church. You know, they've been doing a lot of good work with the help of the Swedish embassy. So where politics is not involved, clearly the two sides are able to get along as friends, and clearly they're able to make, you know, a positive impact. But it's where politics gets involved, that's where it gets messy. And I think we're very far away from achieving anything like that. And if you want to achieve something like that, it's not just the thinking in Cyprus that needs to change, it's the thinking in the region needs to change. And I think we're very far away from it at the moment.
Okay, Ruya, you wanted to say something? Go on.
Yeah. I disagree. I disagree at this point in particular, although agreeing with most of what Ertanc has stated. In terms of being ready, yeah, there might be certain steps to be taken, but I don't necessarily agree with the comment of people not wanting to talk anything related to politics. Right now, there are many dialogue groups initiated by many platforms and initiatives. For example, United Cyprus now is doing dialogue groups between communities under different, and people talk about politics, people talk about their past traumas, and that's the way that they're kind of reconnecting in a way of showing each other how they relate to each other. I think ignoring politics is not the way to go around it anyway. It's actually facing it, but facing it in a positive light of what we take out of it, what we take out of these experiences. What do we do with a Truth and Reconciliation Committee is what should be discussed. And if it's going to help people to face their traumas, but to also find points where they would relate to each other, then that would be a positive impact for sure. And then people are doing it in a way anyway. They're connecting through social media now to talk about how they migrated from side to side and how they left their houses. They share the same experiences. They've lost members of their families, their relatives, their friends, and the missing person people committee, I think.
Yeah,
if I'm stating that wrong in English, I apologize. But especially they are doing a great job in facing, kind of exposing these traumas in a way, because that's their job. But from mostly what I could see, people are not taking the bad side of it, even when they realize they found their family member years later. That they always talk about the experience as a very upsetting one and a very highly emotional one, but something to be taken a lesson out of. And right now, I think a lot of platforms are trying to do that, and especially during the COVID period, they have had the opportunity to do it much easier through Zoom chats, through online discussions. And I think that is kind of demonstrating how we could actually be ready to take the next stages, because people are willing to talk to each other. But I think the main barrier is it shouldn't be the same people that have the same views all the time that are joining these discussions. We should be able to reach out to more people and kind of draw them into these kind of experiences. The people we do believe who are not ready, we should figure out ways of how to approach them and how to take them into this process of healing and reconciliation. So I guess on that part, we have a lot of duty, and we have a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, I think in
that yes, it needs prep to reach out to.
Okay, you kept breaking towards the end, Ruya. But I think in South Africa it was the government sponsored initiative. The government was on board, and in Cyprus at the moment, if anything, things are going from bad to worse in terms of the government approach to peace and reconciliation. So, as we said earlier, people are talking about even annexation of Cyprus. So that's the difficulties I think Emin and perhaps Ertan both alluded to. So, I mean, we are coming to the end, unfortunately. We can go on for another couple of hours, but we haven't got time. So, lastly, I need to ask you this about this disease. Serialization of a TRT1 program, which is causing a lot of criticism, and it created a lot of controversy. What is your take on this kind of programs? Why is it being screened now? Is there an ulterior motive? Do you think for it being screened on the eve of a big sort of conference? Florenza, let me start with you this time.
I think this is like the one thing that I'm actually good at. So I obviously, you know, I work with images, and the whole point is to engage with images in a way that is ethical and that is a collaborative with communities that you work with. That's the whole point of visual anthropology. And can I just say, as someone who, you know, I'm a historian in training, now I consider myself an artist and anthropologist. This, like, if you watch this show and think you are learning about history, you are misinformed. It's like watching The Crown and thinking you're learning about British imperialism. If you watch it for pure entertainment, that's your prerogative. But to think you are learning from a television program that is completely the actors, the accents, everything in between, and think that is actually going to advocate on our behalf when we've had no say in the making of the show. And I recently went onto Reddit just to sort of see, you know, edgelord type of opinions on this program, and seeing the Greek Cypriot perspective and how offensive they found it, which rightfully so, honestly. Like I really understand how it could be offensive for this program to be coming about. But the power of this image, I do think that there is a political meaning and political dimension to it, because otherwise it wouldn't be made, and it wouldn't be made at the budget that is made at as well, and it wouldn't be released in this moment, and you know, it wouldn't be produced during a pandemic on an island that doesn't seem to have access to COVID resources. It wouldn't be made in that context, and seeing the responses of people who actually live in Famagusta. I'm sure, Ruya, you're going to speak about this a lot more eloquently than I will, but in terms of the actual production of this TV program, as a historian and anthropologist, I can say that is entirely fiction. I don't care what you tell me. I don't care what snippet of it is true. It is entirely fiction. It is a fictional television program. So that is one thing I can write papers on this. I have written papers on how this kind of misinformation is, you know, dispelled around our communities. And if we buy into it, in the same way that we can mock British people for thinking the Crown is a representative of their culture and their community and their history, we know it's wrong. We know it's propaganda. We know it's violent. We know it's erasure. So we just have to continue talking about our experiences and our histories in the way that we have today. And I feel very honored to have met and encountered everyone on this panel genuinely, because I've learned so much. So I really, really, really look forward to continuing this conversation. And I would just like to also say that to all of my Cypriot friends across the world, they feel the same offense to this television program. So
thanks, very powerful, strong views. Thanks, Florenza. Sheniz, what do you think about this particular serialization?
So everything Florenza said bang on, right? I haven't watched it because I don't think I could get through the rage that I would feel if I had to. But I've seen trusted friends post about it and say exactly what Florenza said is propaganda. I feel like I should watch it to know what people on the opposite side of what I want for the future of Cyprus want, because this is the opposite side. There's no doubt about it. It is, you know, that's what its intention is there for. And the other thing to add is I'm fiercely protective of Turkish Cypriot language and dialect, and the fact that they've hired Turkish actors, not Turkish Cypriot actors, to play us in what was supposed to be representative of our history, it infuriates me. I'm boiling. I boil with rage at that, because I think there's a big kind of movement to try and cancel out anything that is sort of uniquely Turkish Cypriot. And, you know, I will always stand up to defend that. So that's another reason why I'm angry at that program. And like what Florenza said, it's just going to fuel hate across the other side. And we don't want that. We want to build bridges, not throw this kind of vitriol around.
Just to say that there are a few Turkish Cypriot actors in the program, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. Emin, what is your take on the program?
I can't make big comments because I haven't actually watched it, but I have watched few videos of it, and I've read several commentaries from people that I think they approach to even objectively. But I just want to highlight one thing: that TV show is not dedicated for Turkish Cypriot people or Greek Cypriot people. That TV show is only dedicated to people of Anatolia who have lower education levels, more conservative. It's just feeding them. It's just giving them what they want, giving them the image of the high Turkish pride, high Turkish presence everywhere. That's what I believe it is. But because I haven't watched it, I can't make any comments further.
Okay, thanks, Emin. Ertan, what do you think about the program?
Well,
you are smiling.
Surprisingly, I actually describe myself as a Turkish nationalist, and I actually worked for TRT for 4 years in the past, and this was at the time when they were producing the Ertuğrul series, which is like, you know, their landmark project. And I remember meeting with Ibrahim Eren, who I believe he's still the head of TRT now. And he was describing the Ertuğrul series as, he openly said it basically in a meeting, that it did have a political agenda. And I believe similarly, there is a political agenda for this new Bir Zamanlar Kıbrıs program. I agree with Emin that it is aimed more for an Anatolian audience rather than a Cypriot audience. And to be honest, in Anatolia, I lived in Turkey for 9 years as a Turkish Cypriot, and most of them have not even met Turkish Cypriot. We here in England or, you know, in Cyprus, we think we're everywhere, but actually in Anatolia, when they hear your accent, they're more likely to think that you're from Azerbaijan or a Syrian refugee, you know, because a Turkish Cypriot is like the last thing that they think of. So yeah, I think there is a political agenda. I'm not going to agree or disagree with that agenda, but I think that they could have done things in a lot more effective way by introducing more of a Turkish Cypriot touch to the show. And I think that would have made it more successful. But for anyone who wants to watch anything about the Turkish Cypriot experience of 1974 and those years, I'd recommend another program, which is actually produced by Turkish Cypriots. It's more of a movie, actually. It's called Gölgeler ve Suratler. I think that's a lot more realistic than what TRT has produced.
Okay. Gölgeler ve Suratler. Do you know who produced that and what year was that?
I don't know who produced it, but it was produced in 2010.
Derviş Sayım is the producer
Oh,
of it.
Derviş Sayım, yes. yes, I know. This Turkish Cypriots director. Ruya, let's come to you. And when you are talking about that, please say your last words as well, because we'll end the program.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, this TV show has been widely discussed, especially here in the north. And I mean, I think my friends have summed up pretty much all of the main points that I wanted to raise anyway. But one thing that I can say is that I was shocked to see the effects of this TV show coming out in our own community itself. I think regardless of what it was aiming for, it created an effect that I was definitely not expecting within the community, and that was the separation of people towards how they were seeing this TV show. Some of them said, you know, oh, come on, this is not a documentary, don't take it too seriously. And some of the people were like, no, we should take it seriously because it does have an agenda behind it, a propaganda behind it. Some of the people were more concerned about the accent aspect of it. Some people were more concerned about how the political leaders, Turkish Cypriot political leaders, were portrayed. Some people were, you know, just in general very happy and content that at least this was a TV show exposing the vulnerabilities and the trauma that the Turkish Cypriot people have gone through. But some of the people on the other hand, were raising how bad of a consequence this might have if these traumas are portrayed in a different and in a non-factual way, which I think Florenza has stated very beautifully. I mean, if it's an historical show, it is taken seriously to an extent where you know, these are real people from the past, and they're obviously not anonymous. These are not characters that you would like to play around with, creating love stories or killing them off 3 episodes later when you are getting high ratings. So in that sense, they do carry that responsibility of portraying factual truths. But if that's not the way, then it's a wrong way of kind of passing along this history, which is not even true, to an audience that is more focused on getting their information visually nowadays, or on social media nowadays. So it is important, in my personal opinion, of why this TV show is getting this much backlash and why people are putting too much importance on it. It is not just a TV show. It is, you know, it was even controversial during this shooting here in Famagusta too, due to not taking the necessary permissions from the government nor the municipalities, but somehow everything came along and then it worked out at the end for the producers. I don't know how, but I guess that is also a part of this whole propaganda thing. So in that sense, yeah, I don't know. I can't say too much about its details because I haven't watched it either. I just watched 5 minutes of its first episode and I was already done. So I just, you know, left it off and kind of participate in more in discussions about this. Yeah, so the TV show is that. For my last sentences, I can say that, you know what, first of all, it was definitely such an honor and pleasure to have taken part in an incredible panel like this. I am so glad to be a part of this group and having met very lovely and, you know, excellent people in the meantime. So it was definitely an amazing experience for me. I think that in terms of expressing our views as the youngsters, we should continue to do that. And this show and shows like this, or broadcasts and opportunities like this, are very crucial for us to demonstrate that we also have a voice. And earlier on when we were discussing, oh, whose past is it? Yeah, it might be people's past who have experienced that trauma, but it is our future in our world that we're going to build all together. So the youngsters have a say in this, and they, you know, want to take part in it. And we're not as apolitical as some people try to portray us. So it's just a matter of taking into consideration our views and our involvement in the process itself as a civil society, so that we can overcome this Cyprus issue that is affecting our everyday lives. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Ruya. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Sheniz, can we hear what your last contribution before we close the program? What would you like to see for the future of Cyprus?
So I want to echo what Ruya said. It's been an honour to be part of this panel, and really interesting to hear all your views. For me, I mean, it's cliche and it's a bit cheesy, but I have this symbolic vision of a line in the sand, and it's a line not dividing, but from our past to our future. And I can see hope, and I can see reunification, and I think that the youth have a massive part to play in that. And I will do, you know, I feel like I need to get more involved and start writing again. And, you know, I think in a way being asked to be on this program is going to motivate me to do some more writing on the subject, and, you know, maybe start a blog up again. But yeah, definitely it's not something, it's how much longer? We can't let it go on this long. Our island is beautiful, our island is broken, and it deserves better than what it's been given, I think. No, again, thank you to everyone for having me on.
Thank you for coming along. I just hope that when you come to my age, we still don't talk about Cyprus as an issue. Florenza.
Hi. Thank you to everyone, as always. And it was really great to take part in this conversation. The future that I see for Cyprus is one of community, and it will. I see that happening. And I think today I really did not articulate myself in the way that I'm used to. So I think I feel a bit conscious of that as I close these remarks. But we want there to be economic possibilities for us to return. I have no other desire to be in this country. Like, as much as, you know, I'm very grateful for my education, I would like to return to Cyprus. I know scientists, I know PhD students, I know, you know, lawyers, economists, they're all my age. They're all really, really devoted to Cyprus and really, really devoted to peace. And I do see that happening because, you know, we are very upwardly mobile. We are very privileged in that we have had access to this education. Our British passports have granted us the privileges that we have, and we all have this yearning and this desire to return. And I do think that is possible. I do think open dialogue is necessary. I do think that there's also a necessity to listen to people who are right-wing, to people who haven't had this access. Like, everyone may know, my grandmother, my dad, you know, my mum, my entire family is a left-leaning, very well-known left-leaning. So that is, there's no question as to why my political opinion is this. And then, of course, I did my own research, and of course, I dedicated my life to it. But if we actually continue down this line and interact with people who don't have that, you know, same education or same access or same privilege, everything boils down to education to me. People who have not had these privileges. And just one final note on the television program as well is that Turkish television is widely watched across South Asia, across the Middle East. So it's not just about the Anatolian people who will watch this program. It's about all of the people across the world who look at Turkey as, you know, an emerging, not even emerging, but like as a global force, and who see this cultural production and who then buy into that propaganda as well. So there are knock-on effects beyond us. And that's what I mean by always thinking internationally rather than within the Cypriot community, because as impassioned as I can be, that international solidarity, that actual pouring out to look at what other communities do, as you mentioned, South Africa as well, like these kinds of conversations are the only way that we can actually have a new and, you know, tangible solution. So thank you again for this opportunity. I really do look forward to, taking part in these kinds of discussions and actively working. I look forward to contacting all of you. But yeah.
Thanks very much. And she says she hasn't been able to express herself intellectually. Okay, Emin, what's your last couple of sentences?
I have similar things to say. I really enjoyed the panel, and I would like to thank everyone who gave us this opportunity to be together and collectively shed light upon the important stuff that our country and our people are going through. And I wish there are more and more people who have the same enjoyment as we are having right now. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Emin. Thanks for coming to the program. And Ertan, the real host of the program, what do you have to say for your last few words?
I just want to repeat what everyone else said. It's been a very strong panel. We've been able to discuss and even disagree with each other without raising our voices or anything like that, as we've seen in some of the previous programs that I myself have personally hosted. So this is actually quite promising. I don't want to get into politics really too much, but I just want to say that above and beyond the whole Cyprus problem, I believe that there are a lot of cultural factors at play that are trying to erode our identity as Turkish Cypriots, and these are coming from multiple different directions. So one thing that I've constantly said to my right-wing friends, who are campaigning for the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, I'm like, okay, you can, if that's what you believe, if that's what you want to campaign for, be my guest. But if you're not catering for the kind of cultural needs of this younger generation, who's to say that once you have that state, that within 2 years they won't hold a referendum and decide to reunify with the South anyway? So I feel like they're overlooking a lot of factors. So I think the most important thing is really, as a young generation, is that we stick together regardless of our political views, and we kind of work together on the more kind of cultural aspects, and we kind of maintain and restore the Turkish Cypriot identity among ourselves. And if we can do that, regardless of our political beliefs, then I think then that will be an achievement for the future.
Thanks very much, Ertan. It's not going to end here. You are definitely going to be invited to come to a future program. And in fact, what I personally would like to see is to have an audience, mixed audience of Greek and Turkish Cypriot young people discussing these issues among themselves. That's really what I'd like to see, and I'm sure Eurogenç TV will facilitate that very soon. Thanks very much, all of you, Sheniz, Florenza, Emin, Ertan, and Ruya. Thanks very much indeed for coming to the program tonight. And right, dear viewers, next week, I think Ertan will take over in the usual Monday night slot, and I'll go back to my Sunday night programs. Thanks very much indeed. Have a good night.
Thank you, Ertanc.
Biliyor musun? Erken rezervasyon başladı. Yazın en renkli fırsatları cyprusparadise.com'da. %40, %50 hatta %60'a varan kaçırılmaz indirimler. Erken rezervasyon yap, uçak bileti fiyatına paket tatili al. Uygun fiyata Kıbrıs tatilinin adresi cyprusparadise.com. Zaman akıp gitmeden acele edin. Bir bakmışsınız yaz gelmiş. Cyprus Paradise. Tatiliniz bizimle güvende.
Kalitenin, güvenin, hızlı teslimatın adresi Ancon Furniture. Ancon Furniture ailesi olarak yeni ürünler ile hizmete devam etmekteyiz. Yeni model koltuk takımlarımız, yatak mekanizmaları bir dokunuş ile açılıp bir dokunuş ile kapanabilmektedir. Bir dokunuş ile açtığımız yatak mekanizmasının yatak çarşafı kullanıma hazır, serili olarak içinden çıkmaktadır. Yıl sonuna kadar herhangi bir koltuk takımı alan her müşterimize akıllı sehpa hediyemizdir. En iyi ürün, en iyi fiyat. Sadece Ancon Furniture'da. Bize uğramadan karar vermeyin. En iyisini biz yapana kadar daha iyisi yok.